call the meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Hudson.
Here.
Ward. Here. Fisher.
Here.
McNutt.
Here.
Knopfinger.
Here.
Seaman.
Here.
Butler.
Here.
All right. Pledge of allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Do you have any visitors and correspondence? Okay. If not, we do.
Sorry, what does that mean?
Yeah, if you want to come up to the podium and introduce yourself.
Oh, sure, yeah. Hi, I'm Shelley Patterson. I'm a parent of 2 teenage boys who go to school here, both freshman and senior, and this is my first board meeting, so.
My name is Denise Shelton. I have a freshman here at the high school, and this is also my first board meeting. Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. Do you have anything else? On to reports. Number 1, the auditor's report. I think Dr. Sanders is going to handle that.
Would you like me? Okay.
I would like to be handled. Our auditor is out with COVID.
Yeah. Well, I spent about, I don't know, an hour shaving 45 minutes off the presentation tonight, so I'll just keep it to 90 minutes.
Oh, there you go.
All the board members have a copy of our financial statements. That's the easy read. If you'd like a copy of the AFR, I will send it to you electronically. When I spoke with Matt last week, he regrets not being able to be here, but pretty much our audit was a successful audit. A couple of the key highlights that he would hit, he'd go into much more detail than I'm going to get into. But for the board, because it ties to one of our goals, is the financial profile summary. And this is not in your financial statements, it's in the AFR, but it's what is reported to ISB. We scored out at a 3.90, which is the recognition level. A 4.0 is the highest score that you could have. I believe that we've been 3.9 at least last year, if not the last 2 years prior to this one. So that is a good profile score for the district. There was a continuation of one of the findings, and that the finding is the segregation of duties. That was identified in 2016 audit report. It will continue to be on our audit. Basically, our business office operates with about 3 different people, and they can't segregate their duties and responsibilities due to the size. And so, Mrs. Roberts is the keeper of the activity accounts. She's the sole person that is the keeper of that. Ideally, it would be nice to have a segregation of duties with that, but just given the limited size of one school district, it's going to be there. We did have a second finding last year that dropped off of the audit report. That one, the finding was that 3 of our funds, we had exceeded our budgeted expenses. And that's why that was a finding last year. This year it did not happen, so that finding fell off of our audit. So I think, Ms. Sessig, unless you have anything else that you'd like to share, I think Matt was very pleased with how things went this year. There's additional work. There's additional data work. One of the things that we had to generate on our own, or we would have contracted out the services, is the AFR. We had to produce, the district had to produce the first original copy of the AFR and then submit that to their firm so that they could review it. Their firm's not big enough because all 3 of the people that do our audit make up their firm. So in some of the bigger firms, they'll have someone that just does the review work of the audit or of the AFR. And so that was a new twist for us, but Crystal and I were able to put that together and get that to them. And save the district a little bit of the contracted services that they would have had to employ someone to actually put that first document together. So don't worry about the AFR, because they go through that process just as they would in any other year, but they had to enact that this year. So did I leave anything out?
I don't think I talked to Matt. He seemed pretty happy. He did bring up the separation of duties or whatever they call it. And I think the school our size, he didn't seem panicked about. He did bring up the activities account, which I don't know was that on there.
The activity accounts, the true purpose of an activity fund is the monies that is raised in an activity fund for a certain activity should be spent in the same year that that money is raised, okay? To give you an example, we have something that we're going to need to address. I've got a plan to work on it. Is all of our scholarship accounts that reside within our activity, just general account. I want to say we probably have $170,000 in scholarships. Well, that technically doesn't fit the definition of what an activity account should be. And so I know I've talked with Dr. Freeman and the Washington Community Foundation to explore some avenues of getting that money out of our accounts. And so then that would just tend to leave your typical, we'll just throw it out there, like student council has an account. Junior class has an account that tends to build up because then they use the revenue or the proceeds from their account to pay for prom when prom happens. So, it's okay to go one, bleed over a year, or maybe class funds that kind of bleed over a year, but we really need to clean that up. We're sitting at over $500,000 in our activity accounts and in total, just because such a large number is in the scholarships. But I hope that we can put together a plan, and by the time we get into January, February this next year, maybe we'll be ready to take some sort of action on finding a group like the foundation that can house those scholarship accounts.
Dr. Sandra, on the scholarship funds, currently when someone is awarded that scholarship, then we write the check for that. It comes out of our account then?
Yes.
When some of these funds get reimbursed with money coming in from the donors, then we take that money in and put it in also? It
does. The Floyd Reed Scholarship is a great example. Liz Reed, former employee, she'll stop in and she'll drop off a check to replenish what gets spent. But then we do have some scholarship accounts that get down to, let's say, they may be at like $42. There's not enough money there to, continue on with that scholarship, so a decision has to be made. Hey, we're going to close that account. Now, what are we going to do with, the $42 in that? And so we're working on something that maybe if it gets rolled into just a general scholarship account, those $42 balances and $136 balances, if they were going to give an award of $500 scholarship and that's what's left, those can add up. And if they're drawing interest where our scholarship accounts aren't drawing any interest, interest rates are really poor right now, but if we can get those moved off-site, that would be the best.
Currently, we're essentially administering those funds on behalf of the people who initiated scholarships, right? If we moved over to Morton Community Bank, who would be administering that? Would we still be doing that?
That's what we'd have. Those are some of the things that we'd have to work through. I do know one of the limitations after speaking with Mr. Maley about this is they really don't want to be, writing, 42 checks every year out of that account. That's something that we have to try to work through, and so we'll look at our options and see what we can come up with, and just try to put something together. Otherwise, what he said that they'd want to do is then write one check that then gets divided out. We can do that, but we just have some, control work that needs to be put into place for them.
Where are the class groups? Where do
They sit in an activity
they're
account.
just sitting in, okay. Senator, I wanted to ask, I mean, year after year, we've been cited for this 3 people in the business office, and it'd be nice if we had more people to counter and have checks and balances on everything. We're not in an exact okays, and yet we're not really that, it isn't a bad site either, site meaning S-I-C-I-T-E. We're kind of in no man's land in here, so we comply, but we don't comply. I mean, we're excused, but we don't comply. And it will be that way because we don't, it's hard to have 4 people in the business office in a school this size. And we hear that every year, but we're just out there. And as I said, year after year after year after year, they always put it in there.
Right. What I'm hearing you say is it is a concern, but the whole purpose of the audit is, and the identification of that, is to eliminate any chance of fraud.
Right.
That could take place. And so, because we have that, we do have other controls that are in place. For example, in our food service, we generate monthly reports that then get reviewed by me. I take a look at, the revenue brought in and how it balances out with all the other statements within the cafeteria. And so we do have a paper trail to track that. It's not perfect, I mean, but it is in place to provide some sort of, I don't want to say like an umbrella, but it's there to just, if I stepped away from the job and someone else came on in, that we have this process in place, or if Crystal Ledger, took a different position and someone else came on into the position, we have a process in place that is an accountability. I don't generate their report, but I'll review the report, and those get done, signed off on a monthly basis. And then we do the same thing with all the payroll. So I get a monthly report, and it pretty much balances down to the pennies, just depending on how our payroll system rounds. And so we do provide that to Matt, and he recognizes it, but that's not enough to get it eliminated from the finding.
We need a new category, because we can't be the only school that has this issue.
And I think he said that every time he's presented to us. This is very typical for a school of our
Yeah.
size. And the only way to fix it is to hire more people to do it, nothing except
Correct.
watch the other people.
Yeah.
I mean, essentially, in order for it to work. And so
Right.
what he's citing is not a problem in the account so much as not having a structure of personnel sufficient to oversee and check and balance everyone else in the business office. Is that right?
That is correct.
But they do need a separate category.
All right, any other questions or comments? All right, if not, we'll go on to the dean's report.
You have copies of that in your packet.
Okay, number 3, enrollment report.
We did get the 6-day enrollment figures from the other schools, so we've had your full report. Traditionally, we do that in October with D51 starting a little later this year due to all their construction. It took us a little longer in September to get the 6-day report. That's why it came in October, because it started after. So as you can see, numbers are good. Actually, when compared against last year we projected about 1,436 students. This year we started with 1,437, so pretty much on track with where we thought we would be at this point. As you can see, it also projects out for the next few years as you go. So next year we should see about 1,500 students. The year after that, about 1,503. The year after that, 1,481. And then we start sliding back down into the 13s and even hit a couple 12s in there. So we should be in pretty good shape. Our plan, our staffing plan will work out the way we'd hoped. So it looks like we're going to be able to weather the growth and continue forward well.
Well, we kind of hit both our enrollment and the 6-day.
Yes, we did, all at once.
In one look.
So,
Does anyone have any questions or comments about that?
I guess I'll just mention what ours is right now.
I did have one quick question. I know before you had said how many students were doing e-learning and not physically at the school.
Mhm.
Has that number changed at all?
We're up to 203. So I think if you get the weekly parent updates, we put that number in there
Okay.
every week. So it does sit, I think the week before last, we were at 197, so I think we had 6 new.
And then as far as next semester, they're going to get options for that to. just like
That's,
we just-
we're finalizing kind of what next semester's calendar is going to look like. And then we'll send a bunch of information out to parents. We'll kind of feather it out, similar to the way we did at the beginning of the year, so that people can digest in chunks. And then make a decision about whether or not they want their student to go fully remote or in person. I will say, since we have this process going on now, it won't be like 3 weeks worth of information. It'll probably be, we send out some information one week, and then the next week we send out a little more with a request and a deadline to let us know so that we can start working on the schedule. Every time we do this, it wreaks havoc on how we have to schedule things, so we need a little time. Our plan right now, and this went through the transition team, is to try to get our responses back prior to Thanksgiving week. That way, we have as much time as possible to figure out how many totally remote sections we have, separate students within the classrooms. And I'll tell you, this is very important because I received 2 phone calls from the health department over the weekend, both about positive COVID cases because of what we've been able to do in our classrooms. We had 1 close contact from this school, 1. That's nice. That means we have done our job to keep kids physically distant within the class because the general rule is anything inside of 6 feet for more than 15 minutes is considered a close contact with or without masks. So we had cases early on when we were still kind of maneuvering through all of this and figuring out how to spread rooms out where we'd see more. I think the biggest mass exodus from 1 class was 4 students on top of the COVID positive, so 5 out of 1 room due to 1 case. And then we were able to go in and readjust some things, and it won't be that way anymore. We figure right now the most we'll get out of any 1 room should be about 1 student. So that's good news, you know. The thing about when they ask us to go in and do, we're ad hoc contact tracers through the school. So I work with Lindsay Wenner, one of our deans, and Lisa Fish, our nurse, and the 3 of us kind of run that circus. We go through all of the seating charts. We talk about what kids are in athletics, if any of them are on buses. We're checking all of the dots just to make sure that we know where the kids have been, who they may have been in close contact with, because then it's up to us to send a close contact list over to the health department. So they then get a phone call from the health department talking about close contacts. So it's interesting. Like I said, it's good if we can minimize the number of kids because that's a 14-day quarantine for a close contact, and you cannot test out. The IDPH just put out that guidance a couple of weeks ago that says you can't. At first they said it's possible if you do 2 negative tests and they're spread out long enough, you could possibly. Now they've backtracked on that and said no, you absolutely can't. It's 14 days regardless. So.
Yeah, and it's a big deal. I mean, it has
It is.
significant consequences. Like a friend of ours, you know, their kid runs cross country, and I was hoping to make it all the way, but he was close contact in school, and he's out for the rest of the season. You know? I mean, those, you know,
It does.
those things matter. So.
It's a miserable phone call to make.
Yeah.
You know, it's not what any of us signed up for, but we do what we have to do, and we try to work through it with parents and students as much as possible. But I've had some pretty emotional phone calls with parents who have seniors that are involved in different athletics or involved in different programs. And that 14 days, it's painful. I mean, it's tough the way it is, but you throw that in on top of it, it becomes very, very difficult. So,
No, we don't have to report out on the 203 that are off campus for COVID, or do we?
Yes.
Oh, we do, okay. I didn't know.
yes, I get phone calls on all of them because even though they're remote, by ISB guidelines, they can participate in the extracurriculars, so we have to track them as
I
well,
forgot.
because they can be here for a band or choir or any number of things.
Okay.
So yes, we are tracking those students also. And believe it or not, in some cases, we're actually tracking students that aren't even our students. Because we're in a co-op for swimming, so
Sure.
that it happens if a student from another school gets a call. We have to track them as well to make sure they're in practice for the whole few days. So,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
All right, number 5, food establishment inspection report.
That's just, the health department's still going through and doing their annual food inspection, and so I attached the report. It's kind of changed since most schools aren't doing full-blown, food operations like they've done in the past, and there was a minor finding. Just as a reminder, they've dropped the scores out of 100, and so it's pretty much just a pass-fail, and then they list any of the findings down on the second page. And that's there for your review.
Any questions or comments about that? Okay, the library grant.
Okay. Mr. Gross is not here, so I will be doing the grant report for him. I will do my best to cover all of this. I'd probably be a lot quicker than he is, though. He had another great year in the library. I'll hit some of the highlights. He did have some library highlights in there if you want to read through them. The expenditure report's there. The system itself is working very well. We continue to provide good services through our library. So last spring, database usage was very good as students went into remote learning. So that's a plus. He talked a little bit about book club and game club and how they had meetings virtually, and it seemed to go pretty well. We also hired Ben Page to replace his former assistant who retired last year, Maureen Isaac. And Ben has done a nice job. He has let us know that the laminator is on. Okay, so if you watch your email, you will know when it's on. Mr. Gross was nominated and selected as the September Junior Library Guild Librarian of the Month. That's awesome. Talks a little bit about what the Junior Guild is. Sorry, glasses are falling out. I can't read. All of this, honestly, he's just done a great job. And we're very impressed with what he does. He works well with the teachers. He works well with the students. He's constantly looking for new ways to reinvent what the Media Center is and how they can reach out and work with kids in classrooms and here also. So it's a little bit tough in this climate for obvious reasons. We don't have as many kids wandering freely through the halls to come in and visit the library. Things are a little bit tighter, but they've managed to continue to provide great services in spite of that. So we have a good program here.
He's always so enthused.
He is super excited. One of his big things is Star Wars Reads Day, and he hasn't talked to me about it yet. He was very happy, by the way, with the January date last year. Felt like that worked really well, and it came at a good time because it's kind of gross out, snowy, cold, nasty. And a lot of people came out and just were able to bring their kids and kind of enjoy something different. So, yeah, Tom does a phenomenal job. So, we're proud to have him.
Okay, the number 7 athletic director report.
Yes, you have a copy of the athletic director report. Girls golf was off in Champaign today at their sectional tournament. I did not hear how we ended up, but they made it to sectionals, and we have a couple of golfers that were doing very, very well. He also talked a little bit about boys golf, and then next week I think we start in with, I think this week is Mid-Lima, And then next week, we have regionals and then sectionals for cross-country. So we're coming to the end of the fall seasons now. So I do know that my understanding is IHSA has sent some information to IDPH for approval for winter athletics such as basketball, wrestling, to see if they can get approval on how to proceed. And we're just waiting on the state to respond. So.
I did want to add, last week was at Black Partridge, and it was actually on Friday night. And so we had 3 people come to a cross-country meet that would normally be at a football game, and they really were impressed with cross-country. And so Coach Tom Smith kind of got a good kick out of that because they were rah-rahing up the Friday night lights, and we were all looking, wow, this is a different Friday night lights. It was kind of fun. It is a nice.
It is. It is good. So I'm glad we were able to get some of those athletics in for these kids.
Okay, anything else? All right, number 8, the financial report.
Let me get to it here. So this is the first, we've completed the first quarter. It's hard to believe. I could bring up these reports, but they're small to begin with, and with this new reporting, it's going to be really small. So the expense report, we should be tracking at about 25%, and the paper copy that I have here, we're all within our expended percentages, with the exception of transportation. As a reminder, transportation, we end up covering the full lease costs of our buses. That payment goes out in July. And so that's why we're showing right now 39% expended out of that fund. But that'll trickle down as we go through the year. If I stick with the transportation, I just say all of our leases are going to be up on June 30th for this year, for all of our 10 buses and our 2 activity buses. So there should be an action item next board meeting authorizing the superintendent to let bids for the leasing of our fleet. And so I just wanted to hit that on there. I really should have tried to gotten it into this board meeting, and it just didn't happen. So that will be forthcoming. Getting back to the expense report, the revenue report, at the time that this was run, we had received half of our property tax installments, and so that's the local revenue portion of it. And so we're right at about the 50 percentile for our total revenue. The state revenue, our evidence-based funding is the exact same amount as it was last year. They capped that for all the school districts, and those dollars have started to flow. So that's good to see that money, the state revenue, coming on in. When I take a look at our insurance and investment report, so there's the investment report. Not much change there, especially with the interest rates being as low as they are, hardly any change. But I did want to, if you take a look at the graph on the right, we had our first month where our expected expenses matched about what we take in as far as our insurance premium dollars. And so that's what a typical month would look like. All the months to the left, those are great months for us. And this is where it plays out. So, this year we have spent just about $780,000 in medical claims as compared to last year. So, you see this total difference over last year. And so, as you go on down, we're tracking really well. Except dental. Dental is up. I think when the dentist's office opened up, I think everyone ran and got their dental work done. Which is great. We need to make sure that takes place. But overall, we're almost at $1 million less cost to the district than we were last year. And so that's good. Our health trust balance for back-to-back months has been over $1.3 million. And so it was actually up a little bit more. We had our insurance committee meeting, and literally like 10 minutes right before I got the updated health trust balance, and so it was nice to, give that to the committee. So those are your reports. Do you have any questions?
Nothing else on that? Number 9, board committee reports, I think. Was insurance the only one that, did we, this one?
Policy.
Oh, and policy. Do we have anyone want to report out on what they did?
Well, the policy met, and we had a nice packet, it was about this thick, but most of it was footnotes, so it wasn't too extensive, but we did go through a few things, and then we have a recommendation to come to the board for the first reading for acceptance of the packet, and we made the necessary changes, and they're in there for your review. There wasn't anything that, I think that there wasn't anything really, there was one policy that was new, but that had to do with COVID and the pandemic, since that was never in our policy. And that was really it, wasn't it?
There was the Title IX additional policy, which drove a lot of the thickness of that packet and changed a bunch of other policies by adding in references to the new Title IX policy.
But it was kind of fun to go through the big packet.
Only Julie.
But I enjoyed that, so I did like that.
I felt like we were efficient. I feel like we got through that big packet pretty quickly.
And for the health insurance, we really didn't have a meeting, we had the conversation, because several people had previous commitments, so we didn't have a quorum of enough people to vote on anything.
Everything's going well.
Yeah, and with respect to the insurance, we're at 1.3 million, and that's what, we didn't do max claims this year, right? We did.
No, we didn't. We just funded to expected.
Expected.
That's good.
Anything else? Okay, if not, on to 6, discussion and informational items. Number 1, in-person remote learning update.
Okay, so every week we do send out parent information. That gives you a pretty decent update on where we're at with COVID, what's happening in the school as far as what parents need to know. We're trying to make sure that we're sending something out every week. These are weird times, and the more we're in touch with parents, I feel like that's better for us. It's better for the students specifically, because then the parents have a better feel for where we're at. As far as our numbers today, as of right now, we have a total of 21 quarantined students. We have 3 that are self-isolated, and then we have 8 that are symptomatic and quarantined, and then we have 10 that are healthy quarantined. So our numbers have been very good for the last few weeks. After we made a couple of changes in the classrooms, we were able to get that overall quarantine number to drop pretty significantly. Hopefully we can continue down that path. It's not at the school that we have the issue. If we do see a big explosion, chances are it's something that happened outside of the school where they were hanging around. Even early on, our biggest cases were tied to gatherings where we found out a student was positive, and then 4 or 5 more came in and said, well, I was hanging out with them all weekend. And that's the type of thing that causes these numbers to spike up, especially if 1 or 2 of those students then become positive. Then all of a sudden you've got this trickle effect that spiders out. So we continuously try to talk to the students about being smart, doing what they can to protect themselves. You know, the 6-foot rule, the mask, they do make a huge difference, because I can tell you that our healthy quarantine list, I have yet to find out that any of them have tested positive. They spend their 14 days at home. Their parents want them back here as soon as possible. Trust me, we get phone calls on that. And they come back healthy. And I think that what we've put in place has been very good. It has done what it was designed to do, to keep our kids safe. We've also been able to maximize what we can. A lot of schools around us are doing 5-hour days. We're basically doing 2 5-hour days every day, because we've got 3 in-person hours and then 2 hours of remote work tied to that for both the morning session and the afternoon session. And on top of that, our staff is also doing remote teaching at the same time, because at this point, they've all had kids that have dropped in and out of it. And so it feels like this process has been very strong. I will say, at the beginning, I think there was a lot of anxiety tied to just the unknown. What is this going to bring? We're bringing everybody back. Are we going to have an unsafe place for our students, for our teachers? And we heard a lot of that early on, but I feel like as we've been able to progress through this year, we've been able to kind of step back and say, no, what we are doing is working. And it's providing that in-person learning. I will say you get kind of mixed reviews from the kids. Some of the kids on their way out say this is the best schedule ever. They like the 3 hours. And then other students, are a little bit nervous because they're taking more rigorous courses, AP, honors courses that require more, or dual credit courses through ICC, which require a little bit more work outside of the classroom for those particular students. We tried to warn everybody about that coming into it, but it's tough to say because we're figuring this out. Basically we're building a plane in the air. So the nice thing is we're flying and we have the wings on it, so I'm feeling pretty good about that. All in all, I feel like this has been a successful approach, and for the most part, it's worked very well. And we try to keep fluid as much as we can. So if we need to make tweaks here and there, we are.
Any other questions or comments about or not remote? In person and remote? Okay. Not, number 2, Illinois report card.
So the Illinois report card, and I wanted to talk to everybody about this. I've had a couple interesting webinars with the State Board of Education. I threw some information in there just so that you could see kind of what we're running into. So basically what the state has done is they took our designation from last year and they pushed it to this year. So we are what we were, okay? Which we were very strong last year. That's not a problem, but nobody had a chance to go up or down. So other things that you need to be aware of when the report card does come out, they have this pretty extensive list of things, and they put this clause in there that says some of this information may have been impacted by COVID-19 and the shutdown in March. Chronic absenteeism, chronic truancy, dropout rate, early college coursework, freshmen on track, graduation rate, number of school days, student attendance, student mobility, teacher attendance, teacher evaluation. So pretty much the report card is going to be heavily impacted by what happened at the end of the year last year. And I don't know that it'll be a great mechanism to try to work off of this year because there's just no other time in the history of education that we have shut down for the months of March, April, and May. And basically the state told us, by the way, no students' grades can negatively be impacted, and they actually tried to tell us you can't even advance them in their education, which we did everything we could to advance them in their education because ultimately we are an educational institution, so we were progressing students. But having said that, this report card is going to be interesting this year, to say the least. So as we look at our metrics and what we want to do to improve as a district, we need to take that into account. So we're probably going to have to look more at the previous years and talk about, what we've seen on average. Anyway, there's your.
When is that actually, that's not the actual report card,
no.
right? This is just
This
warning
is-
us of what it's going to look like.
Yes, and the report card itself should be coming out in November. I'm waiting for that information to get to us. As soon as I can get a version of it, I'll try to get it out.
Pretty much going to look like last year. That sounds like.
Yeah.
All right, any questions or comments on that? Not the, okay, so we're doing this a little different. This is our press issue 103, 104, and 105. So instead of waiving the reading, it's now, we're going to start doing it as an information item.
Yes, I went through our actual board policy on this, and there's
Okay.
nothing in policy that mandates that you have to do a first reading, a second reading, a waiving of a reading. So it says that it needs to be presented to the board on 2 separate occasions when possible. Okay, so here's occasion one. It's in discussion and information items. All the policies that were updated are available. You can look through them. It's a pretty exciting read. If you really want the hard copy of the packet that I gave to the policy committee, let me know. I will tell you that 3 packets equaled about a ream of paper. So,
I'll pass it.
So we'll just vote on, then next month we'll vote on it. And then is that going to be the case with any policy, not just Press Plus? So if we,
Yes.
as a policy committee, brings forth something,
yes, and we'll probably, if we're bringing something as a specific policy,
Okay. That
we'll
would be
probably
great.
spend a little more time
Okay.
talking about it in discussion, because then it's done for a unique reason.
Right.
So if I think back to a few years ago when we talked about homeschool students and their ability, we talked about that for months before we actually acted on it. So if there is something out there that we need to address in-house and we want a policy wrapped around it, we'll use this process, but you'll see probably a discussion item. You may see a couple as we try to develop that. But it ends with an action item, so.
which could always, I
Yes.
guess in theory, be tabled if we had a real issue
Yes.
with something.
Yes. So next month when you,
Right.
next month, sorry.
I'm not suggesting that, but I'm just saying,
Right.
okay, I just was curious, so it's not just us.
And next month, when you see this, you'll see the standard 2 actions. We will actually waive the reading so that we don't have to sit here for, an hour and a half and somebody reads all that out loud. And then the second item will be the actual approval of the policies.
Okay, I just wanted to point that out, that we're doing a little bit different. Okay, any comments on that? Okay, what about other? Any other discussion information items?
I have another. One of our students, I don't know if the school is aware of it, but I kind of got wind of it. Noah Johnson, he won a NASA award for a 3D robotic arm that he created. And he received one of the first place prizes of $250 and then a bunch of other prizes that he got. But I think we need to have Ann take an interview with him or one of the students. It was a pretty amazing, he's a pretty shy person, so I don't think he's going to publish it himself, but I thought it was pretty exciting. I read through it all in pretty detailed. Obviously, he's going to be an engineer, so it was pretty fun. And then I had one other thing too. Mandy brought up in policy, we're supposed to be working on the mission and vision to bring back to the administration and the board and just start that process. And kind of, with COVID, kind of locked that, but we're going to get back at it.
Okay. Maybe Ann can help with, is Ann?
She's not here tonight.
Okay.
She had another-
Okay. I
She
just-
will be
it just
watching
occurred to
the
me
video.
that, well, sometimes she's here. Now you never know who's
That's right.
here virtually. Okay. Any other? All right, if not, on to the consent agenda. We have number 1, the minutes, the regular board meeting minutes of September 14th, 2020. Number 2, executive session meeting minutes, September 14th, 2020. Number 3, school board policy committee meeting minutes, October 8th, 2020. And number 2, bills. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Motion second. Any comments or questions on that? All right, roll call, please.
Knopfinger,
Yes.
Butler,
Yes.
Warren,
Yes.
Seaman. Yes. Fisher,
Yes.
Essing,
Yes.
McNabb.
Yes.
All right. Motion passes. And we have one action item, and that is to approve the Europe trip for 2022.
Yes, so as you may recall, last month we talked about the fact that they canceled the trip for this summer, which was nice. So they're talking about potentially doing the trip next summer, so the summer of 2022. And they need to set some tentative dates for that so that they can advertise, they can work with the company. I mean, nothing is set in stone. We can still, if things don't clear up a little better, if we're nervous, we can always stop all of that. But for now, what they'd like to do is reschedule the dates of June 13th through June 21st, 2022. And that is open to students who would like to take a joint trip. I believe that it is, if I remember correctly, I believe it's foreign language, and it's also art. So they're doing kind of a dual purpose, and I think they brought in some history with it. So it's going to be a good trip to Europe, I think. So, anyway, so that's a request that you
Right.
approve the tentative dates.
So do I have a motion to approve the Europe 2022 trip tentative dates of June 13th through June 21st of 2022?
So moved. Second.
Motion and a second. Any other comments? All right, roll call, please.
Essing?
Yes.
McNabb?
Yes.
Knopfinger?
Yes.
Butler?
Yes.
Warren?
Yes.
Seaman?
Yes.
Fisher?
Yes.
Motion passes. And now, number 9, executive session. I need a motion to move into executive session for purposes of collective negotiating matters between the district and its employees, their representatives, or deliberation concerning salary schedules for one or more classes of employees.
So moved.
Second?
Roll call.
Ward?
Yes.
Seaman?
Yes.
Fisher?
Yes.
Essing?
Yes.
McNabb?
Yes.
Knopfinger?
Yes.
Butler?
Yes.
All right. So I guess we have executive session here.
Yep, we're going to have it here again, so
Everyone, please.
we're too cramped in my office.
Right.
I have a question, sorry. Do I have a chance to speak at all, or is that later in the meeting?
That was the visitors and correspondence portion.
That's in the beginning? Okay.
Yes.
I work in a high school, and I actually asked my superintendent, like, how do I go about this? And she said, you'll have time to speak at the end. So that's why, sorry, I had.
Anyone have an issue with?
No.
No, go
No,
ahead.
go ahead.
Go
Okay.
ahead.
Okay, thank you, I appreciate it. Again, I'm Shelley Patterson, I have 2 sons here, freshman and senior. I also, at first I just want to say thank you for everything you guys do. I do understand that working in a school is very challenging, just having to check to see what kids touched, contact tracing and all of that. I'm a school social worker at Mackinac High School. I work there part-time, so I can understand some of what you guys go through here at school. Part of my reason for being here is twofold. Did I hear you guys correctly that we are planning to go into second semester the same way with the, okay. And that is set in stone already, or?
Unless something changes for the guidelines.
Okay.
Our guidelines.
Okay. I guess I just have some questions in regard to that. I don't know if this is a back and forth or if it's just me voicing my opinion here, but hearing you, Dr. Freeman, speak about how most of the exposure is outside of the school and it's contained better inside of the school, I'm wondering how are we benefiting our students by remaining in the 50% session versus maybe reintroducing kids into the school. I recognize Mackinac is a smaller district, but we're in school all day long with the exception of getting out. We're dismissed 1 hour early each day. So I guess I'm struggling to understand how that is benefiting our kids educationally. I also come from a social and emotional perspective where I said to you, I liked hearing what you said in the beginning because obviously the physical health is critical. I'm not discounting that, but at the same time, mental health is absolutely critical. And as a social worker, I'm naturally more passionate about that. I'm not looking for anyone to die here, that's not what I'm saying, but I also am working with a lot of students who are struggling with depression, some of which already maybe had some depression and this is exacerbating it. Others who are feeling more isolated like you had noticed. But there are also kids that are remote learning and I am having a hard time with that. Not all of the kids that are remote learning are doing so for health purposes. Some of them are doing it, and let's be honest, because it's easier. And I don't have to do the same stuff I have to do when I'm in school. From an educational standpoint, kids absolutely benefit from being in contact with the teachers and learning while present. So I guess we have a lot of D's and F's in our remote learners. I don't know what Washington's DF list looks like, but I just have concerns about the educational standpoint as well as the mental health standpoint. And that's kind of why I'm here. I do appreciate what you're doing. I wish I had attended more meetings than this. I guess I've never had a complaint or an issue until now where I'm really struggling right now with hearing that we're supposed to go into the second semester the same way. I feel like we need to maybe, as you said, we were flying the plane as we're building it, maybe we need to kind of add on to that plane as, you know, maybe reintroduce, do something a little different here. And as a parent to the district, I hope that we have some say. I don't know if there's going to be any kind of questionnaire that will be sent to parents again or how that will work, but I'm hopeful that this is not set in stone. That is what I have to say, so.
Can I hit a few of your topics?
Absolutely.
So part of what we deal with 1,440 kids in a building that originally wasn't designed for that type of crowd, okay, is just the compaction. If we had full school, if we had every kid in classes, that one call I got this weekend probably would have resulted in 30 quarantines. And that's part of the problem, because then we're pulling kids out of class, and now you're out for 14 days, and it causes so much confusion to the system. And you know, we are big enough that we have multiple cases. We're dealing with multiple cases every week. I can think of a case earlier this year that was rough enough. It had 24 impacted. Had we been in normal session, that probably would have been about 70 kids. And so that's part of the problem, it's just the size of the school that we are. As far as ISB is concerned, I ran this by the attorney. We had a very candid conversation about a couple of things. ISB said directly, if a student wants to go to remote, they need to be allowed to go to remote. Okay? Now, we've tried to put some parameters on that, try to keep people here, because I think you need a better reason. We have some local control, but remember, we're dealing with ISB. And so ultimately, we answer to them. And so their expectations are students, whenever possible, are 6 feet apart. However, they don't want you at 2 feet. They don't want you at 3 feet. And if we do, then we are running the risk of spreading COVID more quickly. The reason that we've been able to keep our numbers down is because we've had our students 6 feet apart. And that's why this plan was put into place to begin with. And I do understand. You know, I've got a daughter who's here, who's heavily involved. And it's tough. You know, these calls that we're making, they're not because we want to. You know, we're being forced into this like everybody else. I've worked at smaller systems. I've had the advantage of doing that. Smaller systems are more flexible. That's the reality of it. And you tend to have more bigger spaces where 50 kids is a larger percentage of your population. 50 kids is the max we can have in any one space. That includes storage gym, balconies, everything.
Right.
So just feeding kids alone is impossible with 1,400 students. Because you can only have 50 in a place.
So lunch hour is impossible here because of the space. Okay, that makes sense. So would you argue then that Mackinac, for example, we don't always keep kids 6 feet apart? It is impossible also in our building as well. So I guess our numbers are incredibly low as well. So that's where and I'm not trying to be argumentative, but that's where I'm going, okay, but I mean, is that really what's doing it? I don't know. And that's just me. I have a lot of thoughts and passions about all of this, so I'm not trying to be argumentative. I
don't think you are. I think
frustrating.
you're asking questions that a lot of people ask. And these are tough times. We're doing the best we can under the guidance that we've been given to try to follow what we're expected to do, to try to protect both our students and our staff. You know, I think that I understand where you're coming from too. You know, the second we get a chance to drop back into a 7-period day, that's what we are going to do. And
Okay.
those things are us.
That's good to know. And will that possibly happen within the school year, or are we basically saying once second semester starts, it's staying that way?
That isn't necessarily set in stone.
Okay.
If something changes, and what we're stuck waiting for is the phase 5 reopening plan from the governor. So one of two things, a vaccine or herd immunity. Those are his 2 general rules on what would drop the state into a phase 5 scenario.
Okay.
Once we get to a scenario where ISB says, hey, we can increase size and numbers, I think we would revisit anything, because I think we're all in agreement that we want the kids back to the maximum that we can bring them back.
Sure. Well, go ahead.
I was going to say, and I think, correct me if I'm wrong, if that happens in February, we could change.
Yes.
So
Okay.
just because we were to start the way it is now does not mean that semester
We'll finish. Okay, that's good to know. And I'll just say this, I am happy to get on board if you need my help with anything. I've tried contacting Darren LaHood, tried contacting our governor, all the phone numbers, can't get through. So if there is, he's not going to listen to us anyway, let's be real there. But if there's anything that I can do to help, I would be willing to do that, because I'm fully on board. My children are not, with going back more than 3 hours. They would be angry with me for saying this, honestly. They are loving it, but they're the exception. I think there are a lot of kids that would appreciate it, I think, going back too. So if there's anything I can do, I will say I'm on board with trying to help. I can't change the size of the school building and the capacity and all that, but.
Well, we definitely appreciate it. I mean, our parents are truly supportive, and we are very blessed in that, knowing how difficult all of this has been for everybody.
Mhm.
Everybody's been very patient. They've been easy, they've been good to work with. You know, people tend to support what we do, and we don't want to take advantage of that. So, and I think Mrs. Essex said it best, if we get to a spot beginning of next semester, I'll tell you what, if we can shift gears in December, I'd be happy to.
Okay.
We set this up as kind of an in-between, between the extreme of remote and the full, everybody's back the full period, so that we could move either direction quickly.
Okay.
Okay, and that was part of the plan. So if we haven't expressed that out to the public very well, maybe that's something I could work on to make sure that everybody understands. Our plan is to get back to a 7-period a day. That's
Okay.
where we want to be. We want high school to go back to what the kids know, what we understand, and what is best for them. And that's the most important.
Okay.
And our employees, so much easier for the teachers. We were having
Yes.
to strain on them.
Absolutely.
Because this is tough on teachers. This has been a very difficult process for
Mhm.
teachers. You know, and I will say there's a lot of anxiety amongst the staff, but we seem to be in a much better place right now.
Mhm. Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you,
Appreciate it.
sorry about the confusion.
No, that's okay. Mackinac just does it differently, maybe.
So, okay.
Well, with that being said,
I think everyone,
we have
oh, I'm sorry, yeah, did you?
No, that's okay.
Moral support. Good job.
Nope. Yeah. Good.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Drop into the next.